All right, welcome to the Boise Hustle. Jesse Navaro here. If you're here today, it's because you are a beginning entrepreneur, or maybe you already have a freelancing business and you're ready to take it to the next level. And you want to know what it takes to be able to move to the next level. And the whole goal today, part of our show, is to really spark an idea, spark something, either a word or a phrase or idea, or something happens where you listen to something and it sparks the next idea, something, and it starts carrying on inside of you, and you know exactly what you need to do next. And so our whole goal today is catch a phrase or something for today that really kind of gets you moving to the next step. So today I have Ray Allen here today with Peppershock Media. She's going to be able to share her journey, her experience throughout her entrepreneurship, and how to get her from someone working a regular job to a full service media agency where she's taken on huge clients. So I'm glad to have you here today. Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you for having me, Jesse. This is great.
All right. So we're in a good spot.
So thank you, Jesse. This is actually the first guest in here with these podcasts. We've had other clients in here so far and worked out, but thank you for coming to rent the podcast studio. So to answer your questions and kind of understand a little bit more about us and why we got started and all of the fun things that you're wanting to share with your audience. So my maiden name is Peppersack.
Right.
And so peppershock.com was available at the time in 2003 when we started. We were living in Seattle at the time, then moved back. So we brought all of our big city experience back home to the Boise area. And that was August of 2003. We got married and then started the business in October of 2003.
Yep. And married in business, two big events happening in 1 year.
All at the same time. But when we got back, we actually were moonlighting and working other full-time jobs, and then just started doing things with Peppershock kind of on the side and on weekends and nights. And when we first started, we were doing some pro bono work for nonprofits. We started just getting our name out there, networking. I joined one of the chambers. I became a Rotarian, which sort of helped in letting people know who we are and what we did. Yep. And we were operating out of the bonus room of our house at the time, our first house that we purchased right after we got married. Yep. And so Drew and I did the full-time job for a little while, and then we got really big clients all at once. And so then I quit my job, and then not too long after that, he quit his job as a video producer, and I was doing national sales for a magazine publication, calendar printing company. And most of my clients were East Coast, so I would work at 7 a.m. to like 3 p.m. because East Coast time it was 9, Right. So then I would come home and I would be doing networking functions because I think know that a lot of business happens after hours. Yep. I don't know if that is for you, but it seems like networking functions, that happy hour time frame is, I felt like when the key prime opportunity would be to do business, a lot of people, would have that liquid courage that they would drink, and then, you exchange information and just did a lot of listening and understanding. I used SCORE, the retired executives who help people with businesses. I went to the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. I just took a lot of lunch and learn classes just to understand. Meanwhile, I was also finishing my master's degree at the same time.
Oh, on top of building a business.
On top of all of that. Yep. And so I got a master's degree in entrepreneurship and marketing with emphasis there. And then just decided to apply some of the book knowledge to real world experience. And then we just kind of grew from there. I was pretty young and, in my 20s. So Drew and I both. And so then just doing things for clients, kept understanding how to manage and run and gain new clients and talk to people about it all, and just started growing and exploding. And then we hired our very first part-time assistant, and then we hired another person and another person. We hired a graphic designer. We hired, so built up a team over time, and we've been doing this for over 20 years now. Yep. And it's been quite the fun ride. I mean, there's lots of opportunities and things that I did, some, things that I would probably not want to do again, but could, help others learn what not to do and then what to do. I think that has been a good part of the business, is just building, learning, growing, and adapting over time. When we first started, it was all traditional media, right? Mm-hmm. Television, news, print. There was no such thing as Facebook until 6 or 7. And we started in 2003. So us being young, I think people automatically assumed that we would know and be like really the ones to help them get on social media. And that turned out to be true. So then I was traveling all over the state, explaining to financial institutions, banks, insurance, like how to get on social media, and then also help them write their social media policies, and then be able to understand what to use this new, is it a trend? Is it, this new media?
Platform.
They called it new media. It's been around for a long time. It's always funny because one of the banks that I worked with, they actually printed out their social media policy and put it in a notebook, a big fat, like 2-inch binder notebook, and then printed out and gave it to everyone. I'm like, you could just digitally put that on an intranet, and they're like looking at me like I'm crazy. But anyway,
you do not have my permission to post or save my photos.
Exactly. All of those things. So they were just trying to, CYA. But so that's really, kind of through the journey and just always evolving, always learning, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I listen to a lot of podcasts and just learning from other people still to this day. I look and listen to other agency owners and have a peer group of other agency owners from all over the country and belong to a couple of different associations. And then really kind of turned into me speaking a lot on stages all over the world now.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
I do. I really love being able to share what I know so that others can leverage what I have to share for them to learn from. Yeah.
Well, that's great. There was a kind of a gap there that I'd love to know more about, because there's multiple businesses that you could start, right? Yours having to be a service-based business, which I think is probably easier businesses to start. Not easy, but easier to start, because you provide a service, you do a service, and that's it. The low entry, no barrier to entry for people. It's like, hey, want me to post your stuff on social media? I'll just do it for you. Here's what the cost is, right?
With the exception of video production, I will tell you that, because the gear cost is usually what is the biggest line item. Aside from people's salaries.
I totally agree, right? There's equipment costs, things that come into it for sure. And so I guess what I was going with that was it's, a service-based business, right? And then you have other business that you could sell physical products, right? And then if you sell physical products, so where do you get the physical products? The R&D, the physical product, so there's a lot there that go along with it. And so when you decided to start, your business, you mentioned that you happened to pick up a couple of big clients that transitioned you from working a full-time job to not working a full-time job, full-time in the business.
Right.
One, that's probably I don't know about you, but to me, when I transitioned, that was probably one of the scariest things, at least mentally.
Oh yeah.
Right. Because it's like, all right, well, I won't have health insurance.
I don't have the security blanket anymore.
Yeah. I don't have there's no monthly paycheck. What if this guy leaves? There's always no longer a client of mine. And so that's always kind of the hardest transition. Yeah. And so during that process, I guess I'd love to get more detail of how did you, because you mentioned you're doing a lot of networking before then. What happened that kind of triggered where you found the client, and what was the sales process like? Was it an easy close or someone that you worked with? And then also after that, how did it feel to kind of transition to do it completely on your own? Right.
So when we first got going, we told everybody we knew, friends, family, and then family members who could introduce us to other people, other business owners that they knew. And then those other business owners would introduce us to other business owners. And one of the things that happened is when I served the community on these nonprofit boards and doing in the chamber board and those types of things, I suddenly started to surround myself with other people, the whole know, like, and trust factor. In fact, one of the things that we did is we actually brought in Bob Berg, who wrote The Go-Giver, and had some sessions with him. And, The Go-Giver Sales More is the second book he wrote. And the concept of if you give, then you'll receive in abundance. And that truly did help in the very beginning by us sharing with everyone. We went to a couple of trade shows, had a trade show booth. I remember the big, huge monitor, because they used to be a lot thicker than they are now, like lugging that up. And we had a trade show at the Capitol building. And you know how many stairs are in the Capitol building trying to lug up? Anyway. But then people could see, and it's a visual, a lot of people know us for video production because it's the most visual component of what we do as a full service agency. But the continuously being just out there and being, continuously getting our name, and then having other people, and ask for recommendations, ask for referrals, ratings, rankings, recommendations, referrals, and then rewards, right? And this is before social media, really. So you had to help yourself accelerate the word of mouth advertising and tell people about it. And, I never really didn't do a ton of cold calling per se. It was more about, who do you know that knows somebody? And that's continuously what happened is people started to learn about us. Getting involved in the chamber really helped a lot because then, you'd go to chamber luncheons and functions. The chamber actually hired us to do a state of the address video. So it was like a year-end recap of all the things that they had done. And then people started to see us at those events with the camera. And then we shot footage. We did some real estate, tourism videos. So people started seeing Pepper Shock everywhere.
Yep.
And I mean, not everywhere, but a lot of places where they were.
Yep.
And so just always gravitating towards the places and people that you want to do business with. And I feel like some people that were instrumental in getting us in the right space at the right time, our mortgage broker, when we bought our house, Susie Boyle. And she was chairing the Boise Philharmonic at the time. And she also was on the board for Funzy, which is an every other year big, huge event. And it helped fund originally the Y, and now they do different charity things. Anyway, we did some video work with those nonprofits. They paid us a little, right? I mean, I didn't want to continuously take pro bono 100% because, you're not going to stay in business if you do that. And so we worked it out, and then we got like, we'll give you, tickets to attend the gala event in exchange for your help with doing these videos or these designs or the event promotions or, all the things that we did to help promote those events. And still to this day, we do what we choose to do, like the Jade and DeLuca Foundation, a wonderful cause that we've done their videos continuously for the last probably 10, 15 years now, maybe even longer. And the thing is that being around the right types of people at the right time, and they get to know and trust you, and they see your work on a big screen and in the invitations and all the things, the design and everything. And that has helped a lot by putting our logo and saying, sponsored by or produced by or powered by Pepper Shock Media. And that has been a huge way for us to just build awareness of who we are. And when people think about, I want to do a marketing campaign and, we want to incorporate all the different things that we need within our company to help promote our brand and our business, who do they think of? Well, hopefully it's Pepper Shock because they've seen us or they've heard of us or somebody else has said something about it or they've worked with us in some capacity. And that's the idea, is just being able to be top of mind. And now that I present and speak and do lunch and learns and I do webinars and of course this podcast that I do, the Marketing Expedition podcast, powered by Pepper Shock Media, that has just continuously spread awareness about us. And I remember speaking at the Boise Chamber Lunch and Learn kind of thing. It was like a business education series that they asked me to present. And this was years ago. And one of our now clients attended that like 7 years prior.
Yeah.
And then she thought of us when the agency that she was working with, I think, went out of business or something. And so she called us and said, we need a new agency. Would you be interested? And oh, by the way, we have a $200,000 grant that we need to use up by the end of the year. And this was like September. Yeah. And I was like, Merry Christmas. Yeah. Right. Let's talk about it. And, so it always just kind of like, it's a long game to do that, right? It's not going to be always immediate. You're not always going to sell something in the back of the room, but you're going to have mindset and then meaning, and people then get to see you as a thought leader and get to see that at least ideally, what you're talking about. And then they will come to you when the timing is right for them. Yeah. That's what a lot of what I've done to help build Pepper Shock and Drew too. I mean, he's out, he was, for many years, he's been the Ducks Unlimited state chair PR person for Ducks Unlimited. And he's involved in a lot of other different things. And now he's on the Snake River Stampede Associate Board of Directors. And, now we're doing commercials we've done commercials for Snake River Stampede for a long time, but just being visible and being around the right people at the right time that you want to do business with. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the definition of a hustle. I mean, I've done a lot of that, joining chambers, BNI groups, networking. I've done the point where, I've been to networking events and I didn't have any money, but there was a drink minimum. And so I remember one time ordering a martini and I asked him to put as many olives as he possibly can in the martini, and that was my dinner for that night.
Well, at least you didn't drink on an empty stomach.
Yeah, that was my dinner for the night. And so, I'm curious because you kind of went above and beyond, for that. I mean, you didn't have to do any of that stuff. what was it, I guess, what was it that motivated you to pick up and do all of those things? And you join the commerce and then be, part of networking groups, maybe done one or two, but you really kind of went all out.
Do you want to know what the honest truth is?
Yeah.
I had a really hard time saying no.
Okay.
Because when people found out, there's new blood, let's get them in on our board or committee or task force, or let's get them here. I though, one of my proud moments though is the Nampa Chamber met at 7 a.m. regularly, like once a month.
Yeah.
And I said, if you want me to be on this board, I will not be here at 7 a.m. I have 2 young children.
Yep.
I have to get them off to school, right? Drew's working too.
Yep.
We're both in the business. There is no way that I will do that at 7 a.m. So I lay claim and credit for them for years, over 100 years. They met at 7 a.m. on whatever day it was, that they now meet at lunchtime because of me.
Okay, yeah.
And because they need it, it's always like, I've seen so much transition in the business world, where it kind of was a man's world in some regard. I mean, and over the years, anytime I can make an impact and allow changes to be different. And at the time I was a lot younger and, female and mom, right? Mm-hmm. They probably had never had a young female mom on the Nampa Chamber board before. Yeah. Not to, throw them on their bus or anything. It's just, it was time for transitions and changes. Yeah. And I think that was probably around circa 2006 or 7. And so I'm really happy. And, lots of things have established, I was a co-founder of the Meridian Women's Leadership Committee. And we've done some amazing things and started Queens on the Green and golf tournament that's all women, So there's been lots of, I think, strides to make it a little more inclusive, including women in the world now. And I've definitely seen, he just completed his executive master's of business administration from Boise State.
Great.
He just graduated a couple weeks ago. Yeah. So his
congratulations.
Yeah. And he's had to present and do all those things. And he's definitely, from when we very first started, I was the definite, people person, extrovert. He was more introverted, but he's, I think, more of an ambivert, much more on that side of things. And he's definitely, I have rubbed off on him enough to where he can now, get in front of people and be okay with it. But when we first started, that was, way he would not want to be singled out on a stage. And so I'm really actually very proud of where he's come from all of that. And now he knows, how to network and talk to people and not be so shy and afraid. So no, I can relate to that. I'm probably about 50-50 extrovert, introverted. Some days I'm like, let's go meet people. And the other days like, I don't want to do anything. I'll just stay inside. And so don't get me wrong, I am too, but I much rather, do you remember the meme that was going around during COVID that said, introvert friends, you need to check on your extrovert friends or whatever, right? Because it's lonely. I don't want to be alone and by myself for too long. And
exactly,
I love people.
Get out a little bit. No, that makes sense. So I mean, you had a lot that happens. You get married. They started the business in 2003. I'm sorry, 2003.
Yeah.
And then when you started business and really started kind of networking, and as it taken off. Was there things that needed to restructure inside of the marriage to make things work? There still needs to be time, that you spent, all this, and then you have kids on top of everything.
Yeah.
So, so if someone who's, currently right now married, who has kids, it's like, what were some things that you structured to really kind of make things work?
The teamwork makes the dream work, and it really is. And it's good that he and I are a little yin and yang in different areas. I am not a morning person. He is, thank God. Yeah. And then also, I truly appreciate how he helps around the house and does things that are always supposed to be the female's role or whatever, but we share in a lot of things. And at one point I was like, I can't keep up with the housework. So then I hired a housekeeper. Yeah. So that's my contribution. Yeah. I was like, I love Button Babes, Krista Patterson. She has a team of people that come in the house, and there you go. I am taking care of the house. Okay. I hire the people to do it. I mean, it's relief because that's time that I can otherwise be spending on doing other things that would be more impactful or meaningful by spending time with my kids or by spending time, with my husband. So, and I mean, it's definitely a balancing act of who can do what and when and where. I remember I was featured in an article one time. It was I don't know, Women of the Year, or 40 Under 40 or something like that. And I had Emerson in my hands, and he was little, and he had boogers all over his nose. Yeah. And I was, and the photographer showed up early. I was not ready for them, not prepared at all. And I was literally had him in my arms to go take him to the bathroom to like clean his, and she took pictures before I was even ready or anything.
Gosh, yeah.
And guess what was printed?
Okay.
I was like, oh yeah, that is this is the way, you know, you do, you know, you run a business, you got snotty nosed kids sometimes, and that is the reality of my life.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, we've definitely, you know, been able to work it out. I mean, I won't lie, sometimes, you know, I don't always agree with him, he doesn't always agree with me, but you know, at the end of the day, we still kind of, you know, figure it out and work through it. And you know, if we're pissed off at each other, we just know to cool it and, you know, walk away for a minute and get back to reality and check it out, and we're fine. I mean, we've always been able to balance it and make it happen that way, you know. And me networking after hours or, you know, those types of things, it works out because I'm much more of a evening person, you know, than a morning person. He's much more the morning person, so he'll go to the coffee, he's been to the coffee things at 7 a.m. or 7:30 in the morning, which I don't want to do, so it works out quite lovely. He'll get like when before the boys start, now they drive, and you know, the oldest is off to college, but he would get him to school in the morning, I would pick him up in the afternoon or pick him up after whatever sport or club or whatever activity they were doing, and it just worked out. You know, we just continuously do the different things that we both do, and it's not for everybody though, I can tell you that. Not everybody understand, especially if you've got one entrepreneur and one spouse who has like a normal 9-to-5 job. That person that's working a 9-to-5 job really has to be very understanding of the entrepreneur, because they don't work normal hours. Their brain doesn't even work in the hours that are confined to the 9-to-5. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
And I mean, you can have thoughts and ideas and come up with ideas that are not in the normal, you know, society says 9-to-5. And if you've got an idea or something that you want to work on at midnight, then go for it. Right. And that's what I've done. And it's just been a nice balance that way.
Yeah. I think it's really important, kind of exactly, you know, what you said, all those things, and it's kind of communication, knowing who a person is. You know, there's many times where I work, you know, midnight, 1, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning, because if you're on a roll, you kind of just keep going.
That's when your inspiration sometimes hits, and no one's bothering you. You don't have your staff, your kids, your spouse. That's your alone time, right? I feel like I get a lot done.
And then, you know, if one spouse goes to the office every single day and then you kind of stay home, that's also another thing too. It's like, hey, it's like, I'm going to the office, you're staying home. Like, what's going on? Yeah. Having to explain that, you know? Yeah. And so there's, you know, there's lots of, you know, I think communication is probably huge with that. And I think it's really good. It sounds like you guys you mentioned kind of balance each other out, which is really good. You know, especially with 2 kids. It could be...
Well, and now I teach too at Boise State. So there's all, you know, I actually told them that I don't want to teach night classes anymore. Usually adjuncts teach at night. But I was like, well, I'm the master of my own schedule, so I'd rather teach during the day so that I don't miss out on choir concerts and cross-country meets and games and things. So it's nice to be able to have the flexibility. And I think that is one thing that we've been able to do is, hey, if we want to take our kid to some leadership camp because he was nominated for it, we can take off and do that and work remotely. And it's still, the business will still be here when we get back. Right.
And kind of going back a little bit, you had mentioned that you picked up a couple of clients and then you decided to go full-time in the business. What was it that kind of the decision maker of like, all right, I'm just going to do this? You know, was it just purely income-based? Was it your plan all along? You know, I guess at what point do you know when to transition from working your job, quitting the job, moving this thing full-time? You know, and then like what kind of support did you have to that?
Really, the catalyst was working day job that I had, and it was just ridiculous. I felt like I was herding cats, honestly, and managing these people that really didn't want to be managed and or be there, and it was just awful. I hated that job. So that, knowing I wanted to quit working at that
You hated it anyways.
Oh my God, I hated it anyway. And then also, we actually got 2 big shoots, client shoots and things to work on that I had no more time off. I had already used all the time off that I could. And so it was like either we take these jobs and I quit, or we don't take these big jobs. So I quit.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the next thing you know, I'm working with the Tamarack Ski Resort and helping and doing some stories with them and shooting some stuff. And mind you, I do know, I mean, I also worked in news and have shot lots of things before. Drew's usually the one that shoots, and he far surpasses me in his capabilities, but he wasn't able to quit right away. because he had to finish out some video projects that he was working on. And then, so I was like, all right, tag, I'm in. And so then there was that. And then we actually got a job to work with Albertsons, and I was like, I don't want to pass this up. We can't pass this up. This is huge. And we actually had a really good working relationship with them for quite a while until they sold to Safeway, and then they bought them back, and I don't know. Anyway, but it was just like, okay, it's here we go, do or die now, and here we are. Then we just started getting more bigger jobs and bigger clients, and just kept going. I had to hire some people to help, and then Drew quit first, and then we hired people after that. But he worked at Channel 6 as a commercial video producer.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, the day that we decided it was time for him to quit, I had a client call me and wanted a quote for doing a video production series, commercials.
Yep.
So then Drew gets home from work from Channel 6, and he said, yeah, there's this client that called for doing some commercials, and we got to talking, and it was the same person. She got a quote from me at Pepper Shock, and then also got a quote from Channel 6.
Wow.
So either way, Drew would have ended up working on it. So we ended up letting Channel 6 have it, because obviously now it's a direct conflict of interest.
Yeah, of course.
Because they said they didn't care that he was doing it on the side as long as it's not a conflict of interest.
Right.
In that moment, it became a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So we didn't intend for us to be competing, with his day job, but we ultimately let Channel 6 have the job. But it was like, okay, it's time, because now, we've crossed that bridge of conflict. So
you're getting so big, you're competing with Channel 6.
I know, at the time.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I love that plan, because I think the best way to do it is when you're not in need of money. Because when you're starting a business, and a lot of people start business because they need money, but ideally you should start a business because you want the freedom. You want to do what you want to do. If you start a business because you need money, the problem is then you're kind of forced to do things you wouldn't normally do because you need the money. Mm-hmm. You're forced to take on a client you normally wouldn't take on because you need the money. You're forced to do certain things because you need the money. You don't build it the right way.
Right.
And so
because it's out of desperation.
It's out of desperation. So you're forced to do these dumb things you wouldn't have done. Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening is you're making yourself miserable. Mm-hmm. And so I've done that before. I've taken on clients where I shouldn't have taken on, and different things, and just you learn those lessons. And so you had a good support system. You built up the business just right. You had a couple of clients. You didn't just leave your job just to pursue something that maybe would have happened. You left your job to take on clients that were going to pay you money. Yeah. And then your decision was, do I continue working this job because I'm out of leave, basically, and not take these because of what? And so you've made a decision, but I obviously ended up being the right decision. Mm-hmm. But you made a decision based on, potential sales and revenue coming into the business.
Right.
So if you were to leave, you would have more generation of revenue coming in, as if you didn't. And so, and then you had an even bigger contract, Albertsons. I'm just shocked. I've worked with big clients, but I never worked for Albertsons. So not networking that, you have, the capabilities you have is just incredible. And I'd love to dive in more, but I know we're on limited time because you got a couple of events you have to go to. Kind of fast forward.
I'm golfing.
Yes. Well, hey, but you mentioned, you have networking events that you put together. Yeah. And so, I'm sure, knowing who you are, business might happen.
That's right.
And so,
that's why you golf, right? Business happens on the golf course all the time.
Exactly. So, anyways, I guess if we're to fast forward today, and if you were to try to start, Pepper Shock Media today, what are some things that you would do differently today than you would have done when you started your business 20 years ago?
I've debated on whether if this would have been any different or helpful or not. I probably would have worked for some other agencies before I started my own. However, I say that, but at the same time, I don't think that we would have done what we did to figure it out on our own and make things happen the way they did differently than what other agencies do, because then I would have had influence on how other people do it. Mm-hmm. I had no idea how some people do the certain things that they do, so I had to figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
And I think that was very valuable to figure it out. And if I didn't know it, I either researched it or I asked questions or I found other people to tell me, what they did or how they did it. And I always aligned myself with other business owners and mentors that could help me through my path, regardless if they were other agency owners or not. So on the flip side, maybe it'd be great if I would have worked for another agency, but maybe not, because then I would just be like everybody else. And we are not like everybody else. Any stretch of the imagination. We do things very different than anyone else. It's probably because I didn't work for another agency and have that. But I did work with people who had other types of businesses. So Art Schultz was a great mentor. He helped me with my handbook because he just let me use the one that he did, that he paid, consulting people thousands of dollars to put together for him. And I took it and I modified it into our own. I pepper shockified it, I call it, and created the culture book. And then we also have, people call it the SOP, but I call it the Pepper Shock Way. And then now we document all of our processes and how we do all the things. And I like our way. I really do. And so would I have done that? I don't know. Because I have too much drive and ambition and too stubborn, I guess, at that time when I was younger. I've obviously changed a lot, but I might still have some stubbornness. I don't know. But I feel like that could have been something that maybe when I was younger felt like I had imposter syndrome and I didn't know what I was doing. But at some point that kind of faded and I had more confidence just because we were doing okay. And surviving and not having to go back to a regular 9-to-5 job. I think I'd make a terrible employee right now because I've been, my own boss for so long. And I think it's satisfying to know that we did it.
I joke about that all the time. I said, I'm unhireable. Like you try to hire me as an employee, it won't work. And so going back to the networking piece of things, would you still network? I guess what networking organizations would you join today?
Rotary was a big part of my being for quite a while. And I didn't just stay at the, Nampa chapter. I also did stuff at the district level. They invited me to speak many, many times at their district conference. And I would always present on, social media and marketing and branding your club. And then, of course, all these business owners who would see me talk about Rotary then would want me to work with them in their business. So Rotary was amazing for that reason. During the pandemic, I just couldn't do it all on Zoom. So I fortunately dropped off. And eventually I'll maybe get back into it again. But I would help we put on Wine, Dine, Be Kind, a fundraiser event it was my creation the year I was Rotary Club president, and I loved it and was able to partner with all kinds of businesses to make donations and contributions. And we raised money for the Shoe That Grows. We raised money for the Migrant Council for the Nampa School District. We raised money for multiple different things, right? And it was just so satisfying to be a part of that. So getting involved, doing service projects, doing community, improvement projects, those types of things are really advantageous. Another thing is the Boise Chamber, Nampa Chamber, Meridian Chamber. I think I even for a while did Caldwell Chamber events. Sometimes the after hours are great, but I really loved like when they do the CEO series or other lunch and learns, so you can learn from other people, but then networking with those people too. Another thing that I did that I met a lot of wonderful people that we still do business with today is government puts on these workshops on how to do business with government. Okay. Which is a whole nother story. I mean, that takes, a lot of work and effort and RFPs and everything. But all of the people who came are not government people. Yep. They're all other owners wanting to do business with government. So guess what? Now you're talking to all these other people who are amazing people who you might want to do business with too. So it all kind of, it works out in a nice, beautiful way. I was a part of Connect Share for a long time, which then turned into Gavent, and I think they call it RiseX now. I haven't done it for a while, just timing, but when I started teaching at Boise State, I kind of dropped off some of those just so that I could spend time with my students.
Now, they give a lot of good value there. So like I'm going to join a lot of those clubs you just mentioned now too as well. Good. So, and then also you mentioned a couple of things like teach at Boise State. I mean, did that help at all? Part of the business side of things, or was it more of like your passion?
Michaela, who works for me now, she was one of my students. So a year ago, I restarted the ad club for Boise State and restarted the National Student Advertising Competition class. And she was one of my first students through that class that I taught. And she did so well that fast forward over last summer, I had told Drew, I was like, okay, I think it's time to maybe hire a part-time assistant. We're just getting busy enough where maybe we just start there. We hadn't hired anybody since COVID. Let's just start there. And he's like, well, maybe one of your students, who would you hire? And I listed her name and a couple others, and literally the very, very next day, and now it's been a couple months since last graduation, she went off on a, fun little, trip and kind of whatever, came back, said, hey, I'm going to be back in Boise next week. If you know of anybody that's hiring, could you let me know? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, come meet with me.
Wow.
So I wanted to get her before, somebody else did. And then, so now she's full-time doing project coordination, learning and doing awesome. And has me teaching benefited me? Absolutely.
Yeah.
In a lot of different ways too. And I also was named, this is pretty cool. The Alumni Association does like this distinguished alumni, like big, huge gala for 6 different people that they name. And so 6 of us were named this last year as a distinguished alumni. And so then I got like on the big screen during the football homecoming game and in the homecoming parade and written up in their magazine and all this really cool stuff. And then they had this whole huge event. And then, they interviewed all these people about me and I guess I do have a boss. He's the marketing department chair of the College of Business. And I also had a mentor from the mass communications building. So I did 2 degrees in mass comm and business management in marketing. Anyway, so they interviewed all of them and then they came to the event and it was just so awesome to be a part of all of that and all the things that they do for alumni. So that kind of thing where you're getting recognition, even though it feels awkward and weird to be recognized and you're like, ugh, at least it's great, keeps you humble. But the exposure is invaluable. Like the whole night at the football game, when I was up on the big screen, they were recognizing all of us. So many people took pictures of the big giant screen that's at Boise State, the new one. I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing's huge. And they kept sending me text messages. And at Boise State, when a whole huge football game is sold out, not all of the text messages always go through right away. So the entire night until like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I was still getting text messages from people like taking pictures. I'm like, you can't buy that kind of exposure, right? You just can't. And, so people knew me from that. Like, oh yeah, I know who you are from BSU. And there's a little write-up. And like, oh my gosh. So the reach is far and wide when you get cool things and recognition like that and people nominate you for things like that. At first I was like, I don't know. That's like, at first it was like being self-centered or being like, I don't know, whatever. But it benefits the business so much. So I was like, gladly, I'll accept. Thanks.
Do it.
It's amazing. Yeah. For
cool.
sure.
Cool. Well, there's still so much I would love to ask you, but I know you're limited on time, but that's been just absolutely amazing. Lots of value in there. So I hope, again, if you're an entrepreneur either starting or if you started or you're looking to kind of go to the next level, that there was something in there that you've gained. And really the whole point is to spark an idea. I don't know how many times that, I've listened to a YouTube channel, a podcast, an audiobook or something that sparked an idea in my mind and thought, oh, maybe I should do that. And then it sparks another idea. And then it just kind of a chain reaction happens. And then I know exactly what to do next. Yes. And so sometimes just a little piece of information that's useful that kind of gets you to the next step. So thank you so much for sharing a lot of those tidbits.
Absolutely.
I would love for you, if you could share a little bit of who your ideal target audience would be.
Yeah.
So like if someone were to reach out to you today, this would be the perfect person. Just anyone who's listening, if this is you, definitely need to contact Ray and the team. And then also just how would they find you? Your website, email address, things like that.
So we have a couple different targets that we like to go after, but I'll share. We usually start with a marketing audit to begin with, and that whole process we go through then helps us both, the client and us, decide if we're going to be a good fit for each other long term, so we can get married after the audit. The audit's like the engagement. Now let's see if we want to marry. So we go through that process, and that's at peppershock.com/audit. You can check that out, and lots of clients have given us wonderful testimonials about going through that process. And then the types of people that go through that do well with us are, I would say, professional services. We do a lot in the senior citizen marketing arena now. It's sort of happened during the pivot, the great pivot of but we were doing a lot of tourism, restaurant hospitality, those types of things, events, and then all of that kind of died at that time. And so we really shifted towards quasi-government insurance. We do senior health insurance benefits advisors, and then which led to doing stuff for the Coalition on Aging, and then led us to all these things. So the mature audience, the senior citizen market, we've really honed in a pretty good sweet spot on being able to capture them, the senior citizens, but also their adult children. Because a lot of the services that they're going to need as they continue to age, assisted living and all of those types of things, those are areas that we've really been quite well on. I say quasi-government because they either get grant funding or it's other people's money that they're spending, which they'll give us a budget and say, okay, what can we do with this budget? And I love that when they give us the reins and allow us the freedom to give them recommendations recommendations of what we think will work, because most likely that's then when we do our best work, is when we're that mode of being able to facilitate the whole creative process, and from start to finish, and being able to then produce the results and share what we know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So we got peppershock.com/audit.
Yeah, that's right.
And then is that the best place to go?
That's where we usually get started, unless you're doing a one-off project and just need video production work, or you can just go to peppershock.com, and on the contact page, there's a form that you can fill out and give us a little more details and information. I'm on all the social media channels everywhere, and also the Marketing Expedition podcast. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, I will make sure that we have that information on there too. We want that on there. So we just filmed a podcast together on the Marketing Expedition podcast as well.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about that. Anyways, well, thank you so much. Really enjoy this and appreciate you having me here in your studio and getting this going. Cool. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.